What happens when a CEO orders at his own fast food chain and hears something so shocking it forces him to rethink everything? Ethan Graves leaned against his car in the parking lot of one of his own fast food locations, staring at the glowing sign. It was late afternoon, and the place was buzzing with drive-through orders and walk-in customers. On paper, his business was thriving: 10 stores across the region, steady profits, and a loyal customer base. But lately, the complaints had started piling up. Customers had written about rude employees, slow service, and orders being wrong more often than not. Ethan's gut told him something was off. He'd built this business from scratch, but as the CEO, he now spent most of his time in meetings, reviewing reports and strategizing growth. He hadn't set foot in one of his stores in over a year, and most of the team members had never even met him. It was a corporate chain now, with managers running the day-to-day operations. He realized he had no idea what was really happening on the ground. Ditching his usual polished suit for a pair of faded jeans, a hoodie, and a baseball cap, Ethan had gone full undercover. His usually clean-shaven face was hidden behind a scruffy beard he'd been growing for weeks. He looked nothing like the sharp, confident CEO his employees had seen in the occasional corporate memo. To them, he'd just be another customer. Tugging the cap lower over his eyes, Ethan walked into the restaurant. The place smelled like fried chicken and French fries, but the energy felt off. The cashier, a young woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Maria, barely glanced at him as he approached the counter. "Welcome," she muttered flatly, not bothering to smile. "Hi," Ethan said casually. "Can I get a number 3 combo, extra sauce?" Maria punched it into the register without looking up. "That's $8.99. Ethan handed her a $10 bill, but before she could give him his change, a loud voice boomed from the back. "Maria, hurry it up. You're slower than a sloth in winter." Ethan's head snapped toward the back of the kitchen. A man, probably in his mid-30s, wearing a manager's uniform, was glaring at Maria. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and had an air of arrogance that immediately rubbed Ethan the wrong way. Maria's cheeks flushed red as she fumbled with the cash drawer. I'm sorry doesn't cut it," the man barked. "You're lucky I haven't fired you yet. God knows why I even keep you around." Ethan felt his stomach tighten. The way the manager spoke to Maria was beyond unprofessional, it was humiliating. Maria handed Ethan his change with trembling hands, avoiding eye contact. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked quietly, but Maria just nodded and hurried off to bag another order. As Ethan stepped aside to wait for his food, the manager sauntered up to the counter. "Hey, buddy," he said to Ethan, forcing a grin. "Sorry about the wait. You know how hard it is to get good help these days." Ethan raised an eyebrow, unsure how to respond. Before he could say anything, the manager leaned in conspiratorially. "Between you and me, Maria's a lost cause, always messing up orders, dragging her feet, but corporate won't let me fire her. Something about needing to keep diversity numbers up." He rolled his eyes. Ethan's heart dropped. The casual cruelty of the statement hit him like a punch to the gut. Maria wasn't just being berated, she was being held at arm's length, dismissed as though she were nothing more than a statistic. Ethan kept his voice steady, though it took effort. "Isn't it your job to train her if she's struggling?" The manager snorted. "Train her? I don't have time to babysit." "Anyway, enjoy your meal, buddy." He slapped the counter and walked off, leaving Ethan seething. As Ethan sat down to eat, he noticed more troubling things. Maria was the only one cleaning tables, running orders, and handling the register, while other employees stood around chatting. Customers grew visibly frustrated at the slow service, but no one seemed to care. Except for Maria, who kept her head down and worked tirelessly, despite the constant criticism. Ethan decided to stick around for a bit longer. He watched Maria handle a rude customer with patience and saw her apologize profusely when an order was delayed even though it wasn't her fault. She clearly cared about her job and the customers, but she was being treated like dirt. The final straw came when Maria accidentally dropped a tray of food. The manager stormed over, yelling loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. "Are you completely useless? You're costing me money." Maria looked close to tears, but she bent down to clean up the mess without saying a word. Ethan couldn't take it anymore. His hands clenched into fists as he wrestled with his emotions. He had come here to observe, but what he'd seen was worse than he could have imagined. It wasn't just bad service, it was a toxic environment. He knew he couldn't walk out of there without doing something. To be continued. Ethan stood abruptly, leaving his tray of half-eaten food behind. He didn't have a plan yet, but he knew he couldn't stay silent any longer. He walked toward the counter, where the manager was now leaning against the soda machine, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. The sight only made Ethan angrier. Maria was still crouched on the floor, picking up the scattered food, her movements slow and hesitant. A couple of customers glanced at her sympathetically, but no one stepped in. Ethan couldn't shake the image of her red, tear-filled eyes. "Hey," Ethan said, his voice sharp as he approached the manager. The man looked up, clearly startled. "Yeah." "What's up? You're the manager here, right?" Ethan asked, keeping his tone calm but firm. "Yeah, that's me," he replied, puffing out his chest slightly. "Why?" "Is there a problem?" Ethan gestured toward Maria, who was still cleaning the floor. "That's the problem, the way you've been treating her." The manager's expression darkened. "Look, buddy, I don't know who you think you are, but this is none of your business. She's my employee, and I'll handle her how I see fit." Ethan took a step closer, lowering his voice so only the manager could hear. "It is my business when someone is humiliated in front of a room full of people. Do you think that's leadership?" The manager blinked, momentarily caught off guard by Ethan's intensity. But he quickly recovered, smirking. "What are you, some kind of corporate watchdog? Go finish your fries and let me do my job." Ethan clenched his jaw but said nothing. He knew confronting the manager outright as a customer wouldn't accomplish much. He needed to see more, to understand how deep the issues ran. He turned and walked out of the restaurant, but not before catching Maria's eye. She looked up briefly, her face etched with exhaustion and embarrassment, but she quickly returned to her task. Ethan made a mental note to speak with her later under different circumstances. The next day, Ethan returned to the same location, this time in an even deeper disguise. He wore a food delivery driver's uniform, complete with a branded cap and thermal bag. It was a role he knew would allow him to move freely through the restaurant without drawing too much attention. As he entered, he caught the manager, whose name tag read Carl, yelling at another employee, a teenager who looked no older than 16. The boy was struggling to carry a large box of frozen food into the back room. "Come on, Kevin. What are you, a toddler? Use your legs," Carl barked, shaking his head in frustration. Kevin mumbled an apology, his face red with exertion. Carl muttered something under his breath and walked off. Ethan approached Kevin as he placed the box down with a heavy thud. "Hey, kid." "You okay?" Kevin glanced up, startled. Yeah, I'm fine, just trying to keep up, you know." "Is he always like that?" Ethan asked, nodding toward Carl, who was now chatting with another employee. Kevin hesitated, then shrugged. "Pretty much. He's worse when the store's busy, but I need the job, so I just deal with it." Ethan's chest tightened. He thanked Kevin and made his way to the back, where Maria was restocking shelves. She looked up as he entered, her face lighting up in faint recognition. "Hey," Ethan said softly. "You're Maria, right?" She nodded, looking wary. "Yeah." "Can I help you?" "I was in here yesterday. I saw how Carl treated you," Ethan began. Has it always been like that? Maria's eyes darted to the door as if expecting Carl to burst in at any moment. Look, I don't want any trouble, I just do my job and try to stay out of his way. You shouldn't have to work under those conditions, Ethan said firmly. Maria sighed. It's not just me. He's hard on everyone, but people need the hours so we don't say anything. It's not like corporate cares. Ethan felt a pang of guilt. He was corporate, and he hadn't had a clue what was happening in his own stores. He nodded, his mind racing. Thank you for telling me, he said. I promise, things are going to change. Maria gave him a skeptical look but didn't respond. Later that evening, Ethan sat in his car scribbling notes on a legal pad. He'd seen enough to know that the problems weren't limited to Carl. The entire store seemed to operate under a culture of fear and indifference, with employees too afraid to speak up and management too complacent to care. He decided it was time to reveal himself. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the restaurant earlier than usual, dressed in his typical business attire. He entered the store and asked to speak with the manager. Carl appeared a few minutes later, clearly annoyed. Can I help you? Ethan extended his hand. Ethan Graves, CEO. Carl's face paled. His eyes darted to the door as if considering an escape route, but he quickly forced a smile. Oh, wow, Mr. Graves. What a surprise. Let's talk in the office, Ethan said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Inside the cramped office, Ethan didn't waste any time. I came here undercover this week and saw firsthand how you treat your team. It's unacceptable, Carl stammered, trying to defend himself. I was just trying to keep things running smoothly. You know how hard it is to find good workers these days. Ethan held up a hand to silence him. Stop, I've seen enough. You don't respect your employees and that reflects poorly on this company. Effective immediately, you're terminated. Carl's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but he didn't argue. He knew there was no point. After Carl left, Ethan gathered the staff in the dining area. Maria, Kevin, and the rest of the team looked confused but curious. I'm Ethan Graves, the CEO of this company, he began. This week, I went undercover to see what was really happening in my stores. What I saw here was unacceptable. No one should feel disrespected or undervalued at their job. He turned to Maria. Maria, your work ethic and dedication haven't gone unnoticed. From today forward, you'll be promoted to shift supervisor with a pay raise to match. Maria's eyes widened. Wait, what? Are you serious? Completely, Ethan said with a smile. He continued, addressing the rest of the team. Changes are coming. You'll all receive proper training, better schedules, and a safe environment to work in. And if anyone ever feels mistreated, my door is always open. The room erupted into applause and Maria wiped away tears of relief. As Ethan left the store that day, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about profits, it was about people, and he would make sure no one in his company ever felt invisible again. Ethan walked out of the restaurant, the applause from the staff still faintly ringing in his ears. The weight of his decision to fire Carl and the promises he had made to the team churned in his chest. His mind raced as he climbed into his car. He knew the hard part wasn't over, it was just beginning. Fixing one store meant little if the problems were systemic. Carl wasn't the disease, he was a symptom. By noon, Ethan was back at his office, flipping through the weekly reports for all the locations. The complaints weren't isolated to that one store. Similar feedback had cropped up from other locations. Long waits, rude employees, and high turnover rates were common themes. He scribbled notes furiously, his frustration building. How had he missed this? A knock at his office door interrupted his thoughts. It was Claire, his operations director, someone he'd trusted to oversee the stores. She looked hesitant as she stepped inside. You asked for me, she said, glancing at the stack of papers on his desk. Ethan folded his hands. We need to talk about what's happening in the stores. I just spent the last week undercover at one of them. Claire's eyes widened. Undercover? Yes, Ethan said, his tone sharp, and what I saw was unacceptable. Employees being mistreated, managers abusing their power, and a complete breakdown of the culture I thought we'd built. How did it get this bad without anyone flagging it to me? Claire shifted uncomfortably. I wasn't aware it was that bad. I visit the stores regularly, and the managers always assure me things are running smoothly. I guess I relied too much on their word. That's part of the problem, Ethan said, his voice softening slightly. We've created too many layers between leadership and the people on the ground. I let myself get disconnected, and that's on me, but now we need to fix it. Claire nodded, her expression serious. What's the plan? Ethan leaned back in his chair, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. First, I'm meeting with every manager personally over the next 2 weeks. Not just to hear their side, but to make sure they understand the standards I expect. Second, I want an anonymous feedback system for employees. Something they can use without fear of retaliation. That's a good start, Claire said, but what about the immediate issues in the stores? You can't be everywhere at once. I'm promoting Maria to interim manager at the store I visited, Ethan said. She's proven she's capable and cares about the team. I'll also send in a support team to help her stabilize things. As for the other stores, we need to identify more employees like her, people who are doing great work but aren't being recognized. Claire hesitated. And the managers who aren't cutting it, Ethan's jaw tightened. They'll either step up or step out. A week later, Ethan returned to the same restaurant unannounced. The atmosphere was noticeably different. Maria, now wearing a manager's uniform, was at the counter taking orders with a calm yet confident demeanor. The staff moved with more purpose, and even the customers seemed more at ease. Ethan watched from a corner booth as Maria approached Kevin, who was wiping down tables. Hey, Kevin, she said, her voice kind but firm. You're doing a great job keeping the dining area clean. Can you help in the kitchen for a bit? They're short-staffed. Kevin nodded eagerly. Sure thing, Maria. Ethan couldn't help but smile. Maria was a natural leader. She wasn't just giving orders, she was earning respect. After a while, Maria spotted Ethan and walked over, her expression cautious. Mr. Graves, I didn't expect to see you here. I wanted to check in, Ethan said. How's it going? Maria hesitated, then smiled. It's better. People are trying harder and the team feels more united, but it's not perfect yet. There's still a lot to fix. Ethan nodded. That's honest, and that's all I can ask for. I'm proud of the work you're doing here, Maria. Keep it up. Before she could respond, a customer at the counter called out. Excuse me, ma'am. My order's missing fries. Maria immediately turned toward the counter. I'll handle it, she said, excusing herself with a quick nod. Ethan watched her go, his chest swelling with a mix of pride and determination. This was just the beginning, but it was proof that even small changes could ripple outward. By the end of the 2 weeks, Ethan had visited 6 of the company's 10 locations. He'd met managers who were thriving and others who were barely scraping by. He'd listened to employees share stories of unfair treatment, lack of recognition, and burnout. And he'd started implementing changes: mandatory leadership training, better scheduling practices, and a new reward system for employees who went above and beyond. One evening, as Ethan sat in his office reviewing the latest feedback from the anonymous system, a message caught his eye. Thank you for listening. For the first time in years, it feels like someone at the top actually cares. Ethan leaned back in his chair, the words echoing in his mind. He wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was steering the company in the right direction. He picked up his phone and dialed Maria's number, which he'd gotten during their last meeting. "Hello," she answered, her voice hesitant. "Maria, it's Ethan," he said. "I just wanted to let you know you're doing an incredible job, and I've been thinking. After your interim period as manager ends, I'd like to make it permanent. What do you think?" There was a long pause, and then Maria's voice broke slightly. "I'd be honored. Thank you, Mr. Graves." "Thank you," Ethan said, "for showing me what leadership really looks like." As he hung up, Ethan felt a sense of clarity he hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't just about saving a company, it was about building one he could be proud of. And he wasn't about to let that slip away again. 3 months later, Ethan stood at a podium in the company's training center, facing a room packed with managers from all 10 locations. The air buzzed with quiet anticipation. This meeting wasn't optional, he had made that clear. Every manager was required to attend the first leadership summit since the undercover operation that had shaken the company to its core. Behind him, a screen displayed 2 words in bold letters: "Reset Culture." Ethan gripped the edges of the podium, scanning the room. Some faces looked eager, others guarded. A few managers avoided his gaze entirely. Among them, he recognized those he'd identified as weak links during his visits, managers who had been warned, placed on probation, or given direct feedback to improve. This was their moment to prove they were serious about change. "Thank you all for being here," Ethan began, his voice calm but firm. "When I started this company, I believed we could build something special, not just a place customers love, but a workplace people are proud to be part of. Somewhere that values every person who walks through the doors, whether they're here to eat or to work." He paused, letting the words settle. "But somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that." "I lost sight of that." The room was dead silent. 3 months ago, I went undercover in one of our stores. What I saw was unacceptable, toxic behavior from leadership. Employees overworked, disrespected, and ignored, customers frustrated, culture broken. A murmur rippled through the room, but Ethan raised his hand to quiet it. "I'm not here to point fingers. I'm here to fix it. But fixing it starts with accountability from me and from every single person in this room." Ethan clicked a button on the podium, and the screen behind him changed to a list of initiatives already underway. Anonymous feedback system implemented. Mandatory leadership training completed by 70% of managers. Employee recognition program launched. Employee satisfaction surveys showing a 30% improvement. "These aren't just numbers," Ethan continued. "These are steps toward rebuilding trust. But this isn't the finish line, it's the starting point." He turned his gaze to the room's back corner, where Maria sat beside Claire. Maria's promotion to permanent manager had been one of the most celebrated changes, and she had quickly become a beacon of what good leadership could look like. Ethan had invited her to speak today, and though she'd been nervous, she'd agreed. "Maria," Ethan said with a small nod. Maria stood, adjusting her blazer, a far cry from the uniform she'd worn the first time Ethan met her. She stepped up to the podium, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the microphone. "Hi, everyone," she began, her voice steadying as she spoke. "I used to be a cashier at one of our stores. For a long time, I felt invisible. I worked hard, but it didn't seem to matter. My manager, well, let's just say he made me feel like I didn't belong." Several managers shifted in their seats, visibly uncomfortable. "But then, someone gave me a chance. Someone listened. And now I'm here, managing the same store where I used to feel invisible. And I can tell you this, the changes we're making, they're real. My team knows it. My customers know it. And I hope you'll all go back to your stores and make them feel it too." The room erupted in applause. Maria glanced at Ethan, and he gave her an encouraging smile as she returned to her seat. Once the applause died down, Ethan stepped back up. Maria's story is proof that change is possible, but it's not automatic. It takes work and it takes leadership. That's where you come in. He let the weight of his words hang in the air. Over the next 6 months, every store will undergo a full review from customer service to employee satisfaction. Managers who meet the new standards will be rewarded, those who don't. He let the sentence trail off, his meaning clear. Later that afternoon, after the summit ended, Ethan stayed behind to speak one-on-one with a few managers who had requested time with him. One of them was Kevin, not the young employee from Maria's store, but a manager Ethan had flagged during his visits for his abrasive leadership style. Kevin had narrowly avoided termination after agreeing to a probationary period and leadership coaching. "Mr. Graves," Kevin said, stepping into the room with a sheepish expression. "Kevin," Ethan replied, gesturing for him to sit. "What's on your mind?" Kevin hesitated, then sighed. "I wanted to thank you for not giving up on me. After you visited my store, I realized I wasn't the manager I thought I was. I've been working on it, and I think things are getting better. But I wanted to ask, how do I keep improving? How do I make sure I don't slip back into old habits?" Ethan leaned forward, his expression softening. "The fact that you're asking that question is a good sign. The key is listening to your team, to your customers, and to yourself. Don't be afraid to admit when you're wrong, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about being accountable." Kevin nodded slowly, his shoulders relaxing. "Thank you, I'll keep working on it." As Kevin left, Ethan glanced at the clock. It was nearly 7 p.m., but the day's work wasn't done. He picked up his phone and opened the company's new feedback app. Each store had its own channel where employees could submit suggestions, report issues, or share positive experiences. Scrolling through, one message caught his eye. "Maria is the best manager we've ever had. She actually listens to us and makes us feel valued. Thank you for promoting her." It's made all the difference. Ethan smiled, his chest swelling with pride. This wasn't just about fixing what was broken, it was about building something stronger. For the first time in years, he felt like he truly understood his company again, and he wasn't about to let it slip through his fingers.